Truth is, they never, they never did anything after that. I mean, Ian McLaughlin really has been more or less unemployed since then. He's done a few gigs with the Faces once in a while. I mean, the Stones. But other than those,
Rod Stewart,
Yeah, but other than that, he's mostly unemployed most of the time and complains about it too. He knew right then that his gig was over because he was a good enough piano player to be in the Faces, but he wasn't really a great piano player to go out and be playing in all these other bands
like Rod Stewart.
Exactly. So he knew his career was pretty much Mick Taylor. He quit, and he quit for the same reason. That gets pretty deep, as far as I know. The reasons why he quit are really deep. I don't really want to go into that right now. But the main thing is that he quit the band. He wasn't kicked out. He quit.
He couldn't handle it anymore.
He couldn't handle all the trips and stuff. They're into some really heavy, weird trips. They're into some really weird, heavy trips. And when I look back on it, all my friends who are like also a lot of them musicians and stuff. I mean, I know everybody. I'm connected to. I know my girlfriend knows Bob Dylan. She worked for him for like 10 years, so she knows him really well. He lives
up in Malibu.
He lives right up there in Malibu. And she even sees him occasionally and stuff. And I do a lot of Bob Dylan songs. And I've never met Bob Dylan. I would be really impressed to still meet him or something.
Well, how was that going to put you in the Stones if Ron Wood didn't do it?
Like I say, it got to the point where I was hanging out with the band and they really liked me and stuff. And there had been a lot of jam sessions stuff. Plus,
Mick had quit and they were ready.
Plus, they had already heard of me. So I had a sort of local reputation. I grew up in Van Nuys and was a young teenage hotshot guitar player. I already played with like a lot of people in just jam sessions and stuff, not professional. But there's this underground world of like mostly parties and jam sessions where you get known and you get to meet people and stuff. And I was prominent on that scene, so I was already considered like a guy who was going to be somebody, And so they sort of already knew about me. I was considered like this young 19-year-old hotshot guitar player from Van Nuys. And it was considered, I talked to one of the other journalists who was there covering, this guy named Harvey, Kubernick, who's still a famous rock journalist. And he was there, I said, Kubernick, who do you think is going to be in the Stones? Who's he going to be? He says, well, it's a toss-up right now between you, Wayne Perkins, and Harvey Mandel. And it was really down to maybe like the three of us, Harvey Mandel's a well-known session player who did some stuff in the 60s on his own and played with Canned Heat and stuff. And Wayne Perkins is a not so well-known to the public Memphis session player who played on a lot of the classic like Memphis Stack stuff and stuff. He was being considered. And I was being considered.
Is that any relation to Carl Perkins?
I don't know if they're related. It might be. I never even thought about that. Wayne Perkins and Carl Perkins. It never occurred to me. I didn't even know who Wayne Perkins was at that time. They had to explain it to me. Because he's like a session player who's not that well-known to the public. But he actually plays on the Black and Blue album, which was the next album to come out after Woody joined the Stones. But I had particularly become, during that 3 weeks I got to hang out, I particularly become like party mates and drinking buddies with Ronnie Wood and what's his name, the drummer from the Faces, Kenny Jones. They were nice guys and we sort of got along,
So you kind of talked Woody into joining the Stones?
I tried to talk him into it. I straight out talked him into it.
I
straight out talked him into it. I've been hanging out there for 3 weeks. We'd have a lot of like hotel jam sessions and stuff, and it was looking really good for me to. Everybody thought I was trying to be in the Stones, and the rumor was that Mick and Keith were coming into town like in the next couple of days, so I was going to get to meet Mick and Keith, And everybody was just telling me, just hang here at the hotel, just hang out, you're cool, you're covered, you're comfortable. They're covering my bar tab. I was going down to the expensive bar at the Wilshire Hotel and running up like $75 tabs every day, ordering. That was in 1974. Now it'd be like twice as much.
Yeah, sure.
I was sitting there ordering drinks and buying drinks for the whole bar and stuff, and just writing it off to Rod Stewart's manager, who said, just write it on my tab and it's no problem. For like 3 weeks, I was in partying heaven. You wouldn't believe the girls that hang out there and stuff too,
I could take a guess.
And there I was. I mean, I couldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, the incredible groupies that just hang out there and flopping around, trying to get with the band and stuff. And the guys are all jaded to this. They don't even
Tell me a little bit more about this.
So there I was. I was in with the in crowd. I mean, it all really started when I was just at home one afternoon in Van Nuys, and I read in the Variety, in the showbiz newspaper, and said, Mick Taylor quit Stones, and Stones were like looking for a new guitar player. I right away got on the phone, and I know people and stuff. I know this rocket photographer his name was Greg Papazian, and Greg Papazian was the official photographer for the Faces. And I said, Greg, get me in so that I can like meet people and stuff, you know, get me. And he said, you know, you could do it. You could be in the Stones. You're good enough. And they already sort of know who you are. I had like a reputation. People like Frank Zappa and the Stones and stuff already knew who I was as I was coming up on the scene. And I already played like, you know, a lot of party gigs and stuff. And that's where you sort of really get known. And so it wasn't really like a complete unknown. I was already kind of well known on the scene. I was playing much better then than I do now too. That's when I used to practice more. I used to practice 8 hours a day. I was really playing that fast sort of Al Di Meola kind of stuff, which I can't play that nowadays. But I used to have to practice 8, 12 hours a day to do that back then, and whatever. So I got introduced. The next thing you know, I got a bar tab and I'm hanging out there at the bar, and I was in, and we were partying and hanging out in the hotel. The Faces were in town for The Faces were in town for a 5-day stand at Anaheim Stadium, which is one of the points I make these days. You know, in those days, the top bands like the Faces or Led Zeppelin or the Stones or the Who used to sell out 5 nights, 7 nights at like Anaheim Stadium or the Forum. There's no bands nowadays that can do that. Even the top rap bands, you know, the whole music business right now is like down the toilet, to tell the truth, you know, in my opinion. And it's really hard to try to make a living making records right now, you know. It's all, some people blame it on the downloading and stuff and everything, which is part of it, a large part of it. But I think part of it too is because of the bad judgment on the part of the record labels. The people running the record labels these past 20 years are not the same crew of like enlightened guys we had in the 60s. In the 60s we had like Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. They started A&M Records. Both of them were musicians themselves. They understood musicians. Herb Alpert's a musician himself. He understood musicians. And he created a label that was friendly to musicians. And you just don't have that same vibe anymore to record labels. It's all different nowadays, and we all know that. But the bottom line is, in those days, the top bands like the Faces, the Stones, the Who, you name it, even Jethro Tull, they would sell out 5 nights at the Forum. We don't have any bands that can do that anymore, of the current bands. Not Pearl Jam, not
U2.
Not even U2. Not even U2 doesn't sell out like 5 nights at the Forum. And those tickets, I was in high school at that time. I was around 72, 73. And in those days, like, you knew the Stones were coming to town, or Zeppelin was coming to town, like, months beforehand, and all the kids would line up and buy tickets. Those tickets would sell out within an hour from going on sale. That's how big the bands were. You don't have bands that big anymore.